All right, man.
All
So
right.
let's hop right in. Teach us something within the next minute that we need to know. Come on, let's hear it.
Teach us anything. Well, look, one of the things that I write a great deal about is about Stoic philosophy. Most people think that Stoicism means sort of the absence of emotions. In fact, it's this sort of vibrant philosophy and operating system for life. And if I was to teach you what it's about, I would describe it as this. The Stoics say we don't control what happens to us, we control how we respond. And they say that this is the sort of ultimate power over the universe. So there you go.
Boom, boom, awesome. All right, so talk to me about what was one of your lowest points, and then conversely, tell me about the first time you realized, okay, I'm getting over the hump. You know.
Yeah. Well, look, as an author, just in your books, you have many, many low points where you sort of question everything that you've thought of, everything that you're doing. Is this anything? Why did I bet my whole life on this project? This sort of I think Paul Graham calls it the trough of despair. And I've certainly found myself there many times on the projects. And weirdly, the way you get yourself out of those moments is by sort of continuing through them. There's a line from Robert Frost where he says, "There is no way out but through." And that's sort of what you do. And you find yourself sort of over the hump, so to speak. I don't think it's some moment. It tends to be for me that things start to go well again, and then one day I sort of wake up and I realize like I'd left that whole thing behind me. But you have to focus on it's not focusing on getting to some point where you're magically over it.
Mhm.
It's just being so busy that you sort of lose track of everything.
Okay, cool. What about vision? Did you know, as a like, when did you know, hey, I'm not gonna take the traditional path? Is that something that happened to you at a young age, or does that not even really concern you that much?
Yeah, it's something I haven't thought a ton about. I know some people have sort of very grand, clear visions for what they want to do. That's less so my style. I sort of go from I sort of focus on each individual project. I try to exist more in the present moment. While it may seem that I've taken a somewhat untraditional path, sort of dropping out of college, going from marketing into writing, so on and so forth. They all seemed like pretty sound decisions at the time. So I think if you're just trying to do something untraditional for its own sake, I'm not sure that's a good idea either. I try to just do it on a decision by decision basis and not really care about what you're supposed to do, but about what makes the most sense for me.
Most definitely. So, I'm sure a lot of people know that you were, doing the marketing thing at American Apparel.
Yeah.
How, like, talk to me about that. Was that, and you were obviously super young too. So, how was having all the pressure on you?
Sure.
How intensive was that, or was it really not that serious?
Well, that's sort of what I mean about the untraditional path. It's like, look, I took a job there as sort of an advisor or a consultant, and I had no idea that it would become what it became. So it's about sort of taking chances and then making something out of them. But yeah, I was very young, but again, it wasn't like I was sitting around going like, I'm so young, this is so special.
Yeah.
I had a job that I had to do, and so I focused on sort of doing a really good job. I think ideally, ideally your age should be irrelevant, right? Ideally people should, although that might be the first thing they notice about you, pretty quickly they realize that you just do a good job, that you know what you're talking about, that you're someone who adds value that they can rely on. So I just tried to focus on making my age irrelevant and not, I didn't want it to be a bad thing for me, but I didn't want it to be like a point of identity either. I just wanted to be good at my job.
That makes sense. All right, so me, similar to you, at a kind of a young age, I guess I had a internship experience or whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
but I spoke my way into it, and I'm almost, I don't even know if the term deceived was proper, but
Yeah,
like
sure.
I know I needed to meet these people, I know I needed to work with them, and I was willing to work for free. Okay,
Yeah.
and that's something that I don't think that you necessarily like hit dead on the head in your writing that people don't understand that important part. But you did internships. You know, you
Yeah.
put yourself out there. Talk to people, because especially the millennials, we're all like, "Oh, pay me, or I'm not doing anything." You know.
Sure.
So like, talk about that, because how important those years are. People never understand that you have to go through that to actually become what you are now.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. What I think about is like, okay, if I'm trying to learn how to do something, or I want to set up my own business, or I want to set up my own career, then it kind of doesn't matter how much money I make between here and there. What matters is whether I'm getting the opportunities or the knowledge or the access that I'm ultimately going to need. So, I was very flexible on what I was willing to accept financially. Even as the director of marketing at American Apparel, I probably made considerably less than maybe someone else at a similar job at a different company. But the reason I didn't leave to go to one of those companies was that I was learning the most there. And it was also giving me the most freedom to do the other things that I wanted to do. So it's not necessarily that you should work for free, but I think about it more like if you're trying to optimize your job for the maximum amount of salary, at least early on in your career, you probably have your priorities a little bit messed up. I don't want to say that making money is easy, but the education and knowledge and access, those early on in your career, and sort of doing things that really sort of prove that you're solid, that is much harder to get than money. And so that's why I gravitate towards that.
Oh, most definitely. All right, so switching gears a little bit. The first book of yours I read was Trust Me, I'm Lying. All right?
Yeah.
And I read that, I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense to me, right? It kind of opened up my eyes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some topics that are happening in the world right now. Donald Trump, I'm sure a lot of people have, talked to you about this. I personally think he's a smart dude,
Okay.
because he's executing these things to the T,
Yeah.
and it's working, right? So talk to me about your opinions on what he's done and basically how he's your viewpoint on just what he's doing right now,
Yeah. So, look, politically, I very much disagree with him. I guess I might push back on how conscious or deliberate some of the sort of craziness of the campaign actually was. It strikes me that it could also be explained by some other factors. But I think there's no question that he certainly exploited the media system to a degree that almost no political candidate in history has ever really done. He managed to get literally billions of dollars worth of free publicity. He managed to attack his opponents' strengths and turn them into weaknesses. He was able to sort of survive a number of, what would be career-ending gaffes for a typical politician.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily admire that, because I think the end to which it was applied is not one that I sort of agree with. But I do think he certainly shows. He showed how the media system could be exploited, and he showed us, I think, some weaknesses that we have in a media system. And he was able to do an incredibly difficult thing. He won the presidential election in the United States. That's not an easy thing to do, and he did it without a lot of the advantages that a typical candidate has, and you certainly have to acknowledge and respect that.
Totally. He probably read your book.
I hope not. I don't want to be responsible for that.
Most definitely. I hear that. All right. So, similar situation, okay?
Yeah.
Kanye West, all right?
Yes.
I think that he's using these things as well. It seems way more like not authentic and telegraphed, but I feel also the urban world does not they're not hip to these games, right? So it's like, oh, he's in a psychiatric hospital. He's this. Well, this is probably leading up to a some sort of release. What do you think?
Well, so there's something that they call Occam's razor, which says that basically the simplest explanation is probably true. So on the one hand, there's the explanation that this is all an orchestrated, brilliant stunt to promote something that, although he looks crazy, in fact he's genius because he's managed to fabricate this whole thing. That would be one explanation, although it strikes me as being a bit complicated. The simpler explanation, of course, is that he might actually be crazy, and that he's both a brilliant musician who's made music that people love, and he at one point had a sort of a clearer hold on his career, and then now he sort of bounces back and forth between sort of the intelligent Kanye and the crazy Kanye. I don't necessarily know the answer, but I do think it's interesting. It's either a brilliant series of stunts or he really is sick and he needs help. But I don't think anyone knows but him.
Interesting. So, talk about a little bit. This is another thing. People who are kind of trying to be entrepreneurial, but you have to apply an art to it. What was your learning curve like in the business side, right? So you're trying to do these creative things. You're around these guys who are super successful. They obviously have insight in the business world, monetizing. What are some big things that you had to learn?
Yeah, I would certainly say that my mentors in business have been incredibly helpful to me, and I don't think I would have learned these things anywhere else. I don't necessarily see myself as an entrepreneurial or as an entrepreneur. I think some of what I do has entrepreneurial aspects. I mean, an author is creating a business with a book. I have my own company which works with authors and businesses. I think a couple things I learned. One of the things that Doug Charney, who's the founder of American Apparel, told me. I remember I was looking at some store and it wasn't doing very well. It had just opened, and I sort of suggested that maybe it shouldn't have opened. And he said something. He said, like, Ryan, all run rates start at zero. And basically what he meant was that, everything starts somewhere. And if you're thinking that because it's not working now, it won't work in the future, it's sort of a failure of imagination. And I really like that. And then I remember another conversation I had with Doug where I'd done something really well, like some sale I did and made a ton of money. And I called him and I told him about it. And he said, "This is great, but why are you calling me to tell me that you did your job?" And basically what he meant is he was like, "Look, call me when you're not happy with how things are going because it could have been better. Like, don't call me because you want me to pat you on the back." So that's something I think about a lot.
Interesting. That's cool. All right. So, what are you doing next? What are your plans?
Yeah, I'm continuing to write. I just came out with a book in October. I have one coming out next summer. My company does advising, consulting, ghostwriting, development, marketing for authors. We just worked on Tim Ferriss's last book. We worked on a book with John Grisham. We work on a handful of what I think are really cool big projects every year, and then we sort of develop some of our own properties as well. So just sort of chugging away. To go back to one of your earlier questions, I don't have this sort of big grand vision. This is just what I love doing, and I'm just sort of chugging away at it.
Awesome. So I guess final question, sports.
All right.
Talk about Nick Saban. I think me personally, my opinion is he's like one of the great thinkers right now.
Sure.
And what he's been able to do in sports, I think it applies so much on a broader scale. It's almost like Six Sigma type application to non-traditional areas. How was that experience, and what's your insight on it?
Yeah, he's certainly one of the greatest coaches in the history of football. I was lucky enough to speak there earlier this season, and I as I got up on stage, typically the coach, goes off and does whatever he wants, and it was pretty funny to see him put on his glasses and sit in the front row and take notes while I was talking. Just like here's this guy, he knows everything you'd think that could possibly be known about football, about motivation, about anything. And, he's listening to me as if there's something he can learn from me. And I found that, one of the things I talk about in my book is this idea of always staying a student. And it was interesting to see him embody that right in front of me. I found that very, very inspiring.
Hey guys, it's Zach here, and I want to thank you for watching this video. We created a bunch of these videos because we wanted to show you that everyone is different. And since everyone's different, everyone's gonna have their own different path to success. So it's okay if maybe you're going through life right now and you have no idea where you're going. It's okay. You can not know where you're going and still leave an amazing legacy behind you. So if you're into positivity, if you're into empowering others and just feeling really good and really trying to help people succeed, we've created this community that's all about empowering each other and boosting each other to success. So join us in our community. Down below you'll see a link. Click on that link and we'll see you on the other side. Talk to you soon.